Independent Member of Parliament poses questions on a 12.5% cut in civil servants' benefits. Prime Minister responds to questions regarding the 12.5% cut in civil servants' benefits. And SNAP member says that they were never informed about or invited to discuss the draft ordinances. Those are the headlines for Friday, January 29th, 2021. Good evening, viewers. This is SXM Daily News, and I'm Valerie Bumpleton. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And as usual, we have a full newscast for you, so let's get started. In our first story, member of the anti-poverty platform, Mrs. Clay Elshot, speaking at their weekly press conference, which was held at the Whitewood building on Thursday last, the SMAP member said that they were never informed about or invited to discuss the draft ordinances or the new cost-cutting measures. Mrs. Elshot said that the salary cuts from civil servants and government draft ordinances were never presented or negotiated with the 6 unions affiliated with the Chamber of Labor Unions.
Under the heading, Government Sidelines Unions with Unilateral Decision on Austerity Measures, the online media house StMartinNews.com informed that government informed Parliament that it had taken decisions without approval from the unions represented in the HEOA. This was written in 2 draft ordinances presented to Parliament. Government wrote that they were forced to deviate from the requirements that it need an agreement about the salary cuts because the unions refused to return for further negotiations when deeper cuts was necessary. This is a blatant lie. The truth is that these draft ordinances were never presented nor negotiated with the 6 unions affiliated in the Windward Island Chamber of Labor Unions, which represents workers in government and in the semi-public sector. This is a gross violation of international labor standards on collective bargaining. On the website of the International Labor Organization, one can read, combined with strong freedom of association, sound collective bargaining practices ensure that employers and workers have an equal voice in negotiating and that the outcome is fair and equitable. We refer here in particular to the 2 ILO conventions, Convention number 151 and number 154, which have been ratified by the Netherlands as member state respectively on November 29, 1988 and December 22, 1993. It has its applicability in the Netherlands, Antilles, and now also in St. Martin. What the Council of Ministers wrote to Parliament shows that the Council of Ministers has violated Article 7 of the Labor Relation Public Service Convention number 1978, number 151. This article in the convention promotes collective bargaining for public employees as well as other methods allowing public employees representatives to participate in the determination of their conditions of employment. Unilateral decisions taken by government sidelining the unions is also a violation of Article 8 in that same convention. So convention number 151. This article proves that disputes shall be settled through negotiation between the parties and through independent and impartial machinery such as mediation, conciliation, and arbitration. In other words, not by the employer taking unilateral decisions. The HEOA legislation, which after 10-10-10 was decreed for St. Martin, is not the HEOA legislation of the Netherlands Antilles, which in 2008 was adopted by Parliament of the Netherlands Antilles. This 2008 HEOA legislation is more in line with the ILO Collective Bargaining Convention of 1981, Convention number 154, because of the agreement principle to be expressed in a covenant between parties which replace the unilateral decision-making of government as employer.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Sylvania Jacobs, speaking at the continuation of the Central Committee meeting of Parliament concerning several draft national ordinances on January 27, 2021, the Prime Minister was answering questions from members of Parliament regarding cuts in benefits and vacation pay for civil servants and the semi-owned government companies. It was decided that there would be no cuts in salaries. However, there would be cuts in benefits and vacation pay.
The reference to the minimum wage in this context does not relate to our ongoing discussion about the minimum wage in St. Martin, as it should not be considered a livable wage based on our current cost of living. This minimum, however, was an acceptable minimum threshold for the CFT and the Kingdom Council of Ministers. For the record, I mean, even though that is for government in the third agenda point, none of the cuts affected salaries below, as I mentioned, the top 10 earners within government's organization. So definitely no cuts were made, not even to persons in the higher scales at that level, to their salaries. As it relates to government-owned companies, again, it is to the discretion of the government-owned companies how those cuts would take place. And of course, we ask as much as possible for them to go in line with the way government did theirs. So adjusting whether it was vacation pay and or days and or secondary and tertiary benefits, and as much as possible not touch the salaries of their members, their employees, sorry. The next question from the Member of Parliament: what is the time frame of the effectiveness of the temporary ordinance? This is a temporary law, but how long? Then the answer is for an undefined period as far as the MP is concerned. As the title reads, it's a temporary law. The law includes an article allowing for the end date to be established by LBA. So that is by the government of St. Martin, without having to come back to Parliament. As such, there will be no need to come back to Parliament for that purpose. Questions 6 to 8 were questions directly related to WINAIR, and as such, Honorable MP, we have also provided the Council of Ministers with an update and an overview of their execution of WINAIR, who has to provide the Council of Ministers with an update and an overview of their execution of the cost-cutting measures. Once this has been done, these answers can be provided to the honorable members of Parliament. I will now go to the questions asked by Member of Parliament Westcott Williams. The member requested or inquired from the Prime Minister what exactly is on its way to the Governor, as I alluded to in my opening remarks. I already provided this answer yesterday. However, the retracting of the national ordinance of the cost-cutting measures from civil servants and presenting the new adjusted one based on the inclusion of the adjustment referred to in the NADA report which was highlighted by members of parliament in our meeting on Thursday. Also, the inwerkingstredingbepaling, so the enforcement of this law as to when it would go into force was also adjusted. Furthermore, 2 notas van wijziging, so 2 amendments were sent to Parliament to adjust the inwerkingstredingbepaling for the other 2 draft national ordinances as well. The next question of the Member of Parliament is on the matter of confidentiality. Though I explained and apologized to the MPs, it still troubles the Member of Parliament. How does government envision that?
And still to come, PAHO director says that this pandemic has ushered in a mental health crisis as we have been shaken by fear, depression, isolation, and loss. I'll have the details of that story and much more when SXM Daily News returns.
Hi, I'm Switch.
And I'm Save.
And together we're here
to tell you about WIB, Switch, and Save mortgage offer.
Now at WIB, you can save and benefit from great specials when you decide
to bring your mortgage to WIB.
When you switch, WIB will offer you
payment of penalty fees up to 3 months interest,
payment of notary fees,
waive of bank closing fees,
and also the lowest interest rate.
Plus, you'll have the chance to win back 1 year of interest payment.
Visit any of WIB's mortgage specialists and benefit from WIB's Switch and
Hey, that's my part. And Save mortgage offer.
WIB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching SXM Daily News, and I'm Valerie Van Putten. As we continue now in more news, Independent Member of Parliament Christophe Emmanuel, speaking at the parliamentary meeting, which was held on the 27th of January, posed a number of questions to Prime Minister on the 12.5% cut in civil servants' benefits to meet the conditions for the second tranche of liquidity support. The independent member of parliament queried how each entity would propose the 12.5% cut and wanted to know also what benefits would remain after the implementation of this 12.5% cut per entity. He expounded further.
From media reports in 2020, it would appear that the entities were or should have been informed that the government had agreed that their benefits should be cut by 12.5% to meet the conditions for the second tranche of liquidity support. The question is, please indicate how each entity will apply the proposed 12.5% cut. Also, the minister is also requested to list what benefits will remain after the implementation of the 12.5% cut per entity. Article 6 indicates that the salary of personnel of these entities cannot be increased in any fashion as of 2021, which means that the incomes will be frozen while the cost of living has been steadily increasing. Question: can the minister list what this means exactly? So what type of increases will these employees no longer be entitled to? Also, Mr. Chairman, I would like clarification. Please provide financial statements for the years 2016-2020 to substantiate that the statement that several semi-public sector entities pose a risk to public finances because of their financial situation. Those entities are required to submit financial statements on a yearly basis to qualify for subsidy from government. What legal threat will be posed if entities are instructed to change their regulations, articles of incorporation to accommodate the draft national ordinance? Also, Mr. Chairman, Article 9 of the draft ordinance regulates the adjusting of the terms of employment of the public or semi-public entities. The draft ordinance is supposed to be of a temporary nature. However, the article reads as if a permanent change will be made. Is it expected that the change to the terms of employment be made permanent?
Meanwhile, Member of Parliament for the UD, Mrs. Sarah Westcott Williams, speaking on the draft laws at the virtual meeting of Parliament on January 27th, one of the questions that the MP wanted to know was, will these draft laws be sent to the government specifically asking for the SER's advice? Mrs. Westcott Williams also expounded further with other questions.
The Prime Minister's indicating that these ordinances, if I understand the written answer correctly, will still be sent to the SER. In her oral presentation a few minutes ago, the Prime Minister said they could be still sent to the SER, or the SER could still advise. Very specifically to the members of government, to the ministers, will these draft laws eventually, probably to be laws, will they be sent to the SER by the government, specifically asking for the SER's advice? That's my question based on the answer given in writing. The matter of members of Parliament requesting through the government, through the shareholder, the financial information, financial reports of government-owned companies. That question was posed in the meeting on Thursday last, and the Minister of Finance, in his written response, is saying that, and I paraphrase, these reports are not supposed to be sent to Parliament in no law, not the Corporate Governance Council. No law is it stated that these reports be sent to Parliament. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister of Finance, that is correct. It is nowhere stated. The Parliament, however, has requested these reports. As the government receives them, if the Parliament can also receive them. There is no law against providing Parliament. So I repeat the question once again, and note, Minister of Finance, that these reports in the past, the annual reports of government-owned companies, have been provided to Parliament. So Parliament is asking the government to update its records, our records, with these reports as governments have done in the past. So to say that it's nowhere stipulated that it should happen, I agree with. There's nowhere stipulated that Parliament should not receive these reports either. Both ministers reacted to the issue of the consultancy. Now I understand what the draft law before us says regarding such and normering and you name it. And my question is, what is government's current policy / tariffs on consultants? That's a question I asked on Thursday, and I repeat it again. And if that can be provided, Prime Minister said the Minister of Finance would do so.
And now, as we continue with the director of the Pan American Health Organization, Dr. Carissa Etienne, who is concerned about the increase in COVID cases, says that this sustained boom in cases is sobering proof that our region and our world is failing to control this virus. Dr. Etienne also touched on the mental health issue and says that this pandemic has ushered in a mental health crisis as we have been shaken by fear, depression, isolation, and loss that has been made especially acute as we mark this grim milestone.
And we thank the millions of healthcare workers still on the front lines of this virus who are saving lives every day. And we must ensure that their countless sacrifices will not be forgotten. I want also to touch on mental health. This pandemic has ushered in a mental health crisis as we've been shaken by fear, depression, isolation, and loss that is made especially acute as we mark this grim milestone of 1 million deaths. While we are all shouldering more stress, some groups like people living with disabilities or mental health and substance abuse disorders have been especially hard hit. Paradoxically, while our mentally ill and patients with disabilities are especially hard hit. Paradoxically, while mental health support has been more important than ever, it's also been more out of reach in these particular times. So data from some 29 countries have shown that in most of the countries in our region, many of them have suffered disruptions in mental health services. And these disruptions have been reported in more than a quarter of our participating countries. Of course, we need to talk about the economy. Many of our million people we've lost to this virus were breadwinners whose families depended on them for food and shelter. Today, 16 million more people are living in poverty compared to when the pandemic started. And millions of others are at risk of falling deeper into poverty in the wake of this virus. And as a result, millions of families are at risk of going hungry. Some of them have gone hungry for many months, a challenge that is made more complicated by rising food prices. So here are some of the recommendations that we want to put forward. We've said many times that this pandemic has brought a triple crisis throughout our region, as it has ravaged our health systems, fractured our social protection, and destabilized our economies. The loss of 1 million people from this virus should serve as an urgent call that we must do more to protect ourselves and each other from getting sick. This includes strong calls to action to reinforce the public health measures that are needed now in each of the places that are seeing outbreaks. We need to redouble our efforts to reduce the number of new cases of COVID-19 and subsequent deaths. For example, Chile has lowered the transmission curve by implementing a successful health residency strategy that provides temporary housing for people diagnosed with COVID-19, as well as close contacts and suspects or probable cases who cannot quarantine effectively at home.
And as we continue now with this local COVID-19 update, as of January the 28th, there were 15 persons who tested positive for COVID-19. However, 19 persons have recovered, bringing the total active cases to 151. The total number of confirmed cases is now 1,822. The Collective Prevention Services, CPS, are monitoring 150 people in home isolation. One patient remains hospitalized at the St. Martin Medical Center. The total number of deaths due to COVID-19 remains at 27. The number of people recovered since the first case surfaced on St. Martin has increased to 1,644. 261 people are in quarantine based on contact tracing investigations carried out by CPS. the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, VSA, the Airport Health Team, in collaboration with the Healthcare Laboratory St. Martin, the HCLS, have tested 2,306 travelers arriving at the Princess Juliana International Airport, while CPS has tested 13,533 people throughout the community. As the numbers continue to fluctuate, CPS will continue to actively execute its contact tracing measures. In efforts to control further spread of the virus, Minister of Health Richard Panafleck advises everyone to remain cautious when in public places. Wear a mask at all times, maintain a social distance of 2 meters, and practice good hand hygiene. Now turning to our weather forecast for January 29th, 2021. The Atlantic high pressure ridge will maintain a light to gentle wind flow. Moisture associated with a low level trough will increase the probability of showers during this forecast period. Seas will remain slight to moderate before deteriorating tonight. The necessary advisories will be issued this evening. Small craft operators and sea bathers should remain vigilant. So the outlook through Sunday midday, partly cloudy to cloudy with isolated showers. Now let's turn to your 3-day forecast. And still to come, French drivers are requested to collect their driver's licenses from the title service. I'll have the details to that story when SXM Daily News returns.
The innovative Banco Matico contactless smart card. Your Banco Matico smart card is now equipped with a contactless feature for payments, so get ready to tap and go. Contactless payments are fast, easy, secure, and accepted worldwide at all Maestro-enabled contactless terminals. Tap for transactions equivalent to or less than 100 NAF, or the US dollar equivalent. You will receive notifications via email anytime you tap. Tap, tap, and pay fast with WIB. For more information, visit our website at wib-bank.net. Tap and go with your partner in progress.
Welcome back, viewers. And as we end this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening and this week, this reminder from the French St. Martin, the Collectivité of French St. Martin are reminding citizens who have been informed by the title service that they are required to come and collect their document as soon as possible. Currently, there are 273 driver licenses awaiting to be picked up by their owners from the titles department. As a reminder, each user must be able to present their driver's license in the event of a roadside check or for any administrative act requiring the presentation of a driver's license. The collecting of your driver's license from the Securities Department is therefore compulsory. For paid driver's licenses, in the event that you do not pick up said document before Friday, February 26, 2021, the Collectivité will be forced to initiate a recovery procedure with regard to the holder of the title. The title services is located in the annex of the Collectivité, Rue Victor Morrissey in Marigot. It is open to the public for driver licenses Monday to Friday from 8:15 a.m. to 1 p.m. And with this, viewers, it brings us to the end of this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening. I am Valerie Van Putten. Thanking you so much for joining me this evening. And just a reminder that this and other programs are available online. Simply log on to stmartinmediacenter.com for viewing. And on behalf of the SXM Daily News team, we thank you so much for watching and plan on meeting you right back here again on Monday. Do enjoy a safe weekend.